She was mistaken for the cleaning lady until the host revealed who she really was. Tiffany spun in front of the mirror, high heels on, dress swirling, when her heel caught on the carpet and she stumbled forward. Oh! Hannah grabbed her arm just in time, preventing the fall, but she couldn't prevent the damage. They heard the sharp rip of tearing fabric. No, no, no. Tiffany spun away from the mirror, trying to see her own back. Hannah, tell me it didn't tear. It tore. A huge gap split right down the side, near the waist, where the fabric had given way under the sudden movement. There was only 1 hour left until graduation. Easy. I can fix this. Hannah was already on her knees, examining the tear with her fingers. Fix it? Hannah, this is imported silk. You can't just stitch it up and… I'm not just going to stitch it. Hannah looked up and there was a spark in her eyes that wasn't panic, an idea. This dress has excess fabric right here on the sleeves. If I remove the sleeves and use that material to reinforce the waist, the rip disappears and the cut becomes more fitted. It will highlight your silhouette in a way the original design didn't. Tiffany stared at her, confused. How do you know so much detail about this dress? You speak as if you know every single stitch. Hannah hesitated briefly. Because I designed this dress, Tiffany. I work as a seamstress for Madison, but I'm the one who makes the sketches. Her name goes on the label, but the idea came from my head. Tiffany's eyes widened. Wait, this is yours? The entire dress? The design, yes. Then do whatever you want with it. Now. She didn't need any more encouragement. Hannah grabbed the scissors from the makeup bag, cut off the sleeves with steady hands, opened the side completely, and began to redesign the piece right there on Tiffany's body, pinning it in place before sewing quickly with a needle and thread. Within 20 minutes, the dress had become something else. Sleeveless, with a defined waist and a drape that looked custom-made, because in practice, it was. Tiffany turned to the mirror and remained silent for a long moment. Hannah, this looks so much more beautiful than the original. Much better. Right then, the door opened without warning. Tiffany, it's 8:15 if you don't. Jeffrey stopped mid-sentence. He wasn't looking at his sister. He was looking at the cut of the waist, his head tilted slightly, like someone reading a text in a foreign language and suddenly understanding every word. Who made this change? He asked without taking his eyes off the dress. Hannah. The dress tore and she remade everything in 20 minutes. And look, she designed the original model too. Jeffrey finally looked at Hannah. It was a quick but intense glance. You didn't hide the flaw. You used it to improve the whole piece. He took a step closer, examining the new stitching. This is another level. Hannah felt her face warm up, and didn't know if it was from the compliment or the way he looked at her, as if he was seeing something no one else at that party would notice. It was just necessity. She murmured, "Good necessity is talent disguised as urgency." Before Hannah could answer, a voice cut across the room. "Tiffany, darling, I brought champagne." Ashley Morgan blew in like a scented hurricane, a wide smile, glass already in hand. She greeted Tiffany with 2 air kisses and, as she turned, tripped on her own heel. The glass of red wine flew straight toward the table where the fabric scraps Hannah had cut from the dress lay. Hannah lunged forward and swiped the fabric away with her arm, letting the wine stain the carpet instead of the material. "Oh, what a disaster!" Ashley put her hand to her chest, faking shock. "I'm so clumsy." Jeffrey watched everything with narrowed eyes but said nothing. He just looked at Hannah again, now with a mix of admiration and something harder to define. "You need to come to the party," Tiffany decided, clapping her hands. "Tiffany, I can't go. I'm just the seamstress. People will notice I don't belong in that place." Jeffrey stepped closer, his voice low and firm. "When everyone compliments this dress, they will be complimenting your talent. You should be there to see it." Hannah looked at him, not knowing how to respond. In the end, she just nodded. Ashley watched the scene from the door. The smile completely wiped from her face. 20 minutes later, out on the street, she dialed a number and held the phone to her ear. "Madison? It's Ashley. I need to tell you something about your seamstress. She is lying to everyone and stealing the credit for your dress and your studio. I saw it with my own eyes." On the other side of the line, the silence lasted only a moment before Madison answered. Ice cold. "I'll handle this. She's going to regret it." Hannah Carter. Madison's voice rang through the studio even before the door closed. She stood with her arms crossed, leaning against the cutting table, waiting. "Did you go to the Wells mansion yesterday and show off, telling everyone that dress is yours?" "I wasn't showing off, Madison. The dress tore, I fixed it, and Tiffany asked who designed the model. I was just honest." "Honest?" Madison let out a dry laugh, completely devoid of humor. "Let me remind you of something, since you seem to have forgotten. You are a seamstress. A simple seamstress who can be replaced by anyone else in a week. The name on the label is mine, the studio is mine, and the talent you're so proud of only exists because I gave you a place to work." Hannah felt her stomach tighten, but she didn't lower her eyes. "I only told the truth." "Well, make sure you don't speak anymore. I have clients at that graduation party. Don't ruin this." Minutes later, Hannah's phone buzzed with a message. "Hannah." Ashley's message was excited, almost intimate. "Look, last-minute change. The theme of the party has gone casual. The hall was getting too formal, you know how it is, so they decided to make everything more relaxed. Very simple, basic clothes, nothing formal. That will be the theme. Tiffany asked me to let you know." "Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know." Hannah hung up without suspecting a thing. She put on a black t-shirt, jeans, the best sneakers she had, and went. The mistake became clear the instant she walked through the door of the hall. Chandelier lights, sparkling evening gowns, expensive suits, glasses of champagne. The silence came first, followed by whispers, then laughter. "Wow, look at that. Did she really show up like that?" a voice commented, not even bothering to lower its tone. "I think she walked into the wrong hall, or she works here as a cleaning lady," another added mockingly. Hannah froze in place, checking her phone again, as if the screen could change what had already happened. The giggles grew louder. "Did she come here to work?" a woman in a diamond necklace asked loudly, faking innocence. Right then, Ashley purposely tripped near her, causing Hannah's shoulder to bump into the tray of appetizers a waiter was carrying. The tray flipped onto the floor with a crash of breaking dishes. The laughter doubled. "Sorry, I didn't even see you," Ashley said, smiling. "I think it's better if I leave," Hannah whispered to herself, turning back toward the door. "Hannah?" The voice stopped the chatter instantly. Jeffrey walked across the hall straight to her, never taking his eyes off her, and the way he moved made even the laughter die down suddenly. "You made it. I was waiting for you. Jeffrey, I think it's best if I go." "Go? Why?" "Because a bunch of clueless people decided to laugh at you?" He looked around slowly, staring down each of the faces that had been laughing moments before. "This is Hannah Carter. She doesn't need expensive clothes to be worth more than anyone here. You all should be ashamed, not her." A heavy silence fell over the nearest group. Hannah felt her eyes sting, but not from sadness. "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to." That was when Tiffany spotted them from afar and came running, her red dress swaying. "Hannah?" She hugged her friend tightly, then turned to the entire hall. "For anyone who doesn't know yet, this dress you've been praising all night? Hannah designed it. Every single part, from scratch." The atmosphere shifted quickly. The very people who had been laughing minutes ago now stepped closer, curious, examining the dress with different eyes. "The dress is gorgeous. She should have her own brand," someone commented, and the remark rippled through the nearby tables. Hannah felt, for an instant, that perhaps tonight could take a different turn. Right then, Madison walked up to the small stage in the hall, microphone in hand, wearing the broad smile of someone who knew how to control a room. "Since everyone is talking about the dress, let me clarify. This gorgeous design was created by me in my studio. Hannah is just my assistant. All the credit," she paused dramatically, "belongs to me." The room applauded, unaware of the truth. Hannah felt something tighten inside her chest. It was no longer about the dress. It was about years of being erased, being used, being the hand that creates while someone else signs. She said nothing there. She just walked away in silence, before the tears could fall in front of everyone. The next morning, Hannah walked into the studio even before opening hours. Madison was sitting at her desk, surprised by the early visit. "I'm tired, Madison. Tired of creating and seeing your name signed on top of my work." "Hannah, I don't have time for—" "I quit." Her voice came out calm, without shouting, without tears. Madison opened her mouth, but for the first time no ready answer came. Hannah walked out of the studio with her head held high. No job, no plan, but with a strange, new feeling: freedom. "Are you coming or not? I already made the tea, bought those cookies you like, and I won't take maybe for an answer." Hannah laughed for the first time in days, holding her phone between her shoulder and ear while searching for her house keys. "Okay, Tiffany, I'll come." The Wells house was exactly the size that made Hannah feel small, but Tiffany had a way of turning even the most imposing room into something cozy. They sat on the porch of the Wells house, cups in hand, the afternoon sun falling gently on the glass table. "So?" Tiffany crossed her legs, suddenly serious. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know." "Hannah, seriously, I don't know. I spent my whole life sewing for someone else's name. Now that I don't have that anymore, I don't even know where to start." Tiffany remained quiet, waiting, and it was that silence that made Hannah make a decision. She picked up her phone, opened the gallery, and turned the screen toward her friend. "There is something I never showed you." There were dozens of sketches, dresses that looked nothing like what had come out of Madison's studio, bold lines, cuts that blended the classic with something almost rebellious. "Hannah, is this yours?" "I've been sketching at night for months, in secret. I've never shown anyone." "Why in secret?" "Because it was mine, the only thing that was mine alone." The porch door opened without warning. "Tiff, your key was in the lock again. One day they'll rob you of the whole house because—" Jeffrey stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went straight to the phone in Tiffany's hand. "What's that?" "Nothing. It's just—" Hannah reached out to take the phone back, but Jeffrey had already stepped closer, and Tiffany turned the screen so he could see it better. He said nothing for a moment. He scrolled through the photos one by one. Hannah felt her stomach tighten with every second of silence. "Who drew these?" "I did." Jeffrey looked up from the phone at her. There was no easy compliment, nor his usual charm. There was real, focused attention. "Hannah, this is—" He let out a short laugh, like someone who didn't even know where to start. "This is better than anything I've ever seen come out of that studio, by far." "Stop it. No, I'm serious. Look at this sleeve here, the way the drape falls. This isn't the talent of a seamstress, Hannah. This is the vision of a designer, a real fashion designer. You need to have your own brand." The sentence landed on the porch like a stone too heavy for that moment. "There's no way." "Why not?" "Because it's not that simple, Jeffrey." Hannah stood up, walking to the edge of the porch, her back to them both. "Setting up a studio costs money I don't have. Launching a brand requires a name, contacts, space, machines, fabric, none of which I have. I have sketches stored on a phone and nothing else. Hannah, I can help you." She turned around. "If you agree, I'll invest. I'll build the studio with you from scratch and help launch your brand. With your name, only yours." The silence that followed felt different from all the other silences that afternoon. "No. Why not this time?" "Because I've already lived through that, Jeffrey." Her voice trembled, but not from weakness, from contained anger. "I worked for years for someone who promised to value my talent. And what happened? She stole every piece I made and stepped onto a stage to say the credit was hers. I won't trade one dependency for another. I'm not Madison. I know you're not. But money changes people, Jeffrey. An investment comes with strings attached. You would want to dictate how things work. You'd want to be part of the decisions. And before I knew it, it would be the Wells name stamped on everything. And I'd just be the sewing girl all over again. That's not fair." "Maybe it isn't. But it's what I've learned to fear." Tiffany, who had remained quiet watching the two of them, finally stood up. "Hannah, look at me." Hannah took a deep breath and obeyed. "I've known my brother my whole life." Tiffany spoke slowly, every word carrying weight. "He is annoying. He's controlling with the family business, I know. But he has never, ever put his name on something that wasn't his. If he is offering you this, it is because he believes it is yours, only yours, and he wants the world to see it exactly that way. I have no way of trusting that again." "Then trust me." Tiffany's voice grew softer. "I'll be by your side in every contract, in every decision. If anyone tries to erase you again, I'll be the first to scream." Jeffrey said nothing more. He didn't insist, he didn't press. He just stood there, waiting, with that strange patience of someone who knew that pushing harder would only close the door for good. I need to think. Think as much as you need. He was already leaving. Just don't let fear decide for you, Hannah. You've already wasted too much time being afraid. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the phone on her nightstand, at the sketches that had been hers alone for so long, thinking about every word Jeffrey had said, about every word Tiffany had sworn. At 6 in the morning, before the sun had fully risen, she dialed his number. Jeffrey. Her voice came out steady, without any more hesitation. I accept, but on one condition. The name is mine. The final decisions are mine, and if I ever feel like I'm being erased again, I'm out. No fights, no debts, no looking back. On the other side of the line, he laughed quietly. Agreed. Whenever you want to start, I'm ready. 3 weeks had passed, and the big day of the grand opening of Hannah's studio had arrived. There were 10 minutes left before the doors opened, and Hannah had already changed her shoes 3 times. Stop. Tiffany held her friend's shoulders, turning her to face the mirror. You look perfect. The collection is perfect. Breathe. What if no one shows up? What if everyone shows up and you freak out like this? Tiffany laughed, adjusting a strand of Hannah's hair. On the other side of the curtain, the lights of the small studio were already on, reflecting on the mannequins dressed in every piece Hannah had sketched in secret for months. It wasn't big. It didn't have crystal chandeliers or marble floors like the graduation party hall. But every inch of that space screamed her name. The door opened. People began to walk in. Hannah took a deep breath, adjusted her dress, and stepped out from behind the curtain. The silence that filled the studio was not the kind she had felt before. There were no giggles, no malicious comments whispered behind cupped hands. It was the silence of impressed people trying to take it all in at once. Hannah Carter. Someone commented near the entrance, reading the small nameplate next to the first piece. Wait, is all of this by a single designer? Every single piece, answered a gray-haired woman, examining the seams closely, not even realizing she was speaking loudly enough for Hannah to hear. Look at this finish. This isn't amateur work. From the corner of the room, leaning near the window, Jeffrey watched everything with his arms crossed and a smile he didn't even try to hide. Hannah walked across the studio to him, making her way through the guests. Are you seeing this? She whispered, still unable to believe it. I told you maybe. I never said maybe. He smiled sideways, that smile she had already learned to recognize as dangerous. I said it needed to be seen by the world, and look around, Hannah. The world is watching. His eyes didn't leave hers for a moment longer than they should have, and Hannah felt warmth creep up her neck, completely unrelated to the studio lights. Stop looking at me like that in front of everyone. Looking how? You know how. He laughed quietly, and for a moment it seemed he was going to say more. But a camera flash interrupted the moment. Someone was photographing the opening dress of the collection, the same one Hannah had shown for the first time on her phone weeks ago. Can I post this? The young woman asked, excited. My account has a lot of followers in the fashion scene. Sure. The photo was posted while the party was still going on. In less than an hour, the comments already exceeded 100. Who is this designer? I need to know everything about this collection now. The cut of this sleeve is genius. I've never seen anything like it. Where do I buy it? Tiffany, sitting in a corner checking her phone, let out a tiny shriek that made half the room turn toward her. Hannah, come here right now! What? What is it? Look at this. Tiffany turned the screen. In 1 hour, look at how many shares. Hannah held the phone with trembling hands. Hundreds of people commenting, asking, praising about her work, with her name. Jeffrey approached from behind, looking over her shoulder. See? He said softly, just for her to hear. I told you so. Stop saying I told you so. I'll say it as many times as necessary. The party ended late, with the studio almost empty of display pieces. 3 people had already ordered custom dresses before even leaving. Hannah thought that would be more than enough for a single day of life. She was wrong. The next day, the studio phone didn't stop ringing. Hannah Carter Studio. Good morning. She answered, still in her pajamas, trying to balance the phone, a mug of coffee, and a notebook all at once. Yes, we received your order through Instagram. I'll note down the measurements. The call wasn't even finished when her personal phone was already buzzing with another message, and another, and another. By the third day, she had an order list longer than she could deliver in 2 months, working alone, day and night. Jeffrey showed up at the studio in the late afternoon and found Hannah sitting on the floor, surrounded by fabrics, rulers, and a notebook full of crossed-out notes, her hair tied up messily. "Hannah, I can't do it." Her voice came out tired, barely a whisper. "I can't sew all of this, meet clients, answer messages, organize payments, and still sleep. There aren't enough hours in the day, Jeffrey." He knelt in front of her, gently taking the notebook from her hands. "Then we'll solve this." "How?" Jeffrey looked around the small studio, the already cramped walls, the boxes of fabric piled in the corner, the success that had arrived too fast for a space that was too small. "I have an idea." He stood up, extending his hand to help her to her feet. "But you're not going to like the size of it. We are expanding." Jeffrey spoke the word as if it solved everything, his eyes shining with that confidence only he seemed to have. "Open a larger space, hire seamstresses, people to handle clients, people to take care of the administrative side, while you focus only on what matters, designing." Hannah stared at him as if he had just suggested she jump off a building. "You've gone crazy." "Hannah? We opened this studio 10 days ago, Jeffrey. 10 days. And you already want me to hire a team, rent a larger space, multiply all of this when I haven't even figured out how to run my own business?" "Exactly for that reason." He stepped closer, holding the order notebook full of crossed-out pages she had shown him moments before. "Look at this list, Hannah. You won't manage on your own. The longer you wait, the further behind this list gets, and the more dissatisfied clients you create." "I know that." "Then let me help solve this properly." "No." She crossed her arms, firm. "It's still too early. I need to learn to manage what I already have before thinking about getting bigger. I will handle it." Jeffrey studied her for a moment, realizing he wasn't going to win that argument right then and there. All right, for now." He raised his hands in partial surrender. "But you're exhausted, Hannah. Look at you. When was the last time you ate a meal sitting down, without a phone in your hand?" She opened her mouth to answer and couldn't remember. "See, even you don't know." He smiled, putting the notebook on the shelf before she could grab it back. "Forget orders, forget fabric, forget all of this for one night. Come have dinner with me." "Jeffrey, you have to eat. That you must do. The rest can wait 2 hours." She gave in, defeated more by fatigue than by any desire to argue. The restaurant he chose was small, with low, warm lighting and wooden tables that seemed to hold stories beneath their varnish. None of the extravagance she expected from a Wells. "I thought you were going to take me to some fancy place with white-gloved waiters and leave you pulling at your sleeve every 5 minutes so you don't spill sauce on yourself?" Jeffrey laughed, pulling out a chair for her. The night passed quickly, the way it only does when no one is looking at the clock. They talked about everything, about Hannah's fear of never being able to sustain her own name in the fashion world, and the weight Jeffrey carried as the only Wells willing to bet on things that the rest of the family found too risky. "My family invests in safe things. Real estate, stocks, businesses that have already proven to work." He spun the glass between his fingers. "I'm the only one who bets on people. And does that scare them?" "It does." He laughed. "But it worked with you, didn't it?" "It's still too early to tell if it worked. I already know." She laughed, looking down at her plate, the warmth in her face having nothing to do with the food. It was the first time in a long time that someone had asked what she wanted to build, and truly waited for the answer, not for its utility, but for what she dreamed of. When they left the restaurant, the sky had already changed colors. "It's getting dark fast." The first drop fell on Hannah's forehead before she could even finish the sentence. "Run!" Jeffrey shouted, already pulling her hand. The rain came down hard without warning, soaking them both in seconds as they ran down the narrow street toward the parking lot. Hannah laughed without being able to stop, her hair plastered to her face, her dress heavy with water. "I can't believe I left the umbrella in the car." "I can't believe you run like that in sneakers," he shouted back, laughing just as hard. As they got close to the car, Hannah stepped into a puddle and her foot slipped on the wet stone. Jeffrey tried to catch her by the arm, but the momentum was too strong. The two fell to the ground together. Him on the bottom, her on top, completely soaked and laughing so hard that neither could get up. "This is going to hurt tomorrow," Hannah managed to say between giggles. "Totally worth it." They got up slowly, still laughing, dripping from head to toe. "I think this is my cue to leave," Hannah said, adjusting her wet hair, taking a step toward her own car. "Hannah." She turned around. Jeffrey stood there, looking at Hannah as if the rest of the world had stopped existing for a moment. "I want to do something." He took a step closer. "And I need to know if you'll be mad at me afterward." "Mad about what? Are you going to be mad?" "No." Her voice came out softer than she intended. "I won't." He didn't wait any longer. He stepped closer, gently cupped her face, and kissed her, slow and sure, like someone who had already thought about that moment before arriving at it. When they pulled apart, neither said anything for an instant. They just smiled, soaked, in no hurry to break the silence. That night, neither of them could sleep properly. The next day, Tiffany served tea to Jeffrey in the kitchen, watching her brother with a suspicious smile. "You've been smiling to yourself ever since you walked in here. What happened at dinner?" "Nothing." "Jeffrey." "I kissed her, Tiff." Tiffany almost dropped her cup. "You did what?" From the hallway, standing near the kitchen door, Ashley overheard every word. She had arrived to visit Tiffany, as she always did, but the smile on her face died the instant Jeffrey's words reached her. Later, she found Jeffrey alone in the garden. "Can I talk to you?" "Sure, Ashley. What is it?" "You kissed her." Jeffrey turned serious. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who told me." Her voice trembled, but not just from sadness. There was anger there too, years of it stored beneath the surface. "What matters is that it's true." "It is true." "Jeffrey, She took a deep breath, like someone finally releasing a weight carried for too many years. "I'm in love with you. For years. Before Hannah, before anything." He remained silent for a moment, genuinely surprised. "Ashley, I never knew that. Now you do. I respect you a lot. You've always been important to me, to Tiffany, to the whole family." He spoke carefully, but leaving no room for doubt. "But I've always seen you as a friend." "Just that." The sentence fell like a final judgment. Ashley felt her face burn, not from shame, but from humiliation. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the cold clarity with which he dismissed any possibility, without hesitating. "I see." "Ashley." "I said I see, Jeffrey." She turned around and left the garden without another word, her face burning, her chest tight with a pain that no longer had room to grow on its own. Ashley hadn't even disappeared down the street yet when Tiffany appeared at the back door, her arms crossed, her face loaded with questions. "What was that about, Jeffrey?" She left the house looking like she had seen a ghost. He turned around slowly, still trying to process what had just happened. "She found out about the kiss. And she took the opportunity to finally say some things she'd been keeping to herself for years." He sighed, sitting on the porch bench as if his legs had suddenly grown heavy. "She is in love with me, Tiff. Always has been." Tiffany remained silent for a moment, putting the pieces together. The years of Ashley always being present, always around, always available in a way that no one had ever really questioned. "And you didn't know?" "I hadn't the slightest idea." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I've always seen her as a friend, and nothing more than that." He ran a hand over his face. "She left devastated, Tiffany. And I don't know what to do with that, because there is no answer I can give that will make it hurt any less." Tiffany sat down next to him, leaning her head on her brother's shoulder for an instant. "Sometimes there's nothing to do. Just hope that time takes care of it." They sat there for a while in silence until the matter settled within both of them. Only then did Tiffany look up, remembering the other problem that had come knocking on the door that same week. "Speaking of things to resolve, have you gone to see how Hannah is doing?" Jeffrey raised an eyebrow. "Why? Did something happen?" "Go see for yourself." He found Hannah sitting on the floor of the studio, surrounded by fabric, her order notebook open on her lap and her face buried in her hands. "Hannah? I canceled 3 orders this week." Her voice came out muffled, without raising her face. 3, Jeffrey. People who waited months to book with me, and I had to say no because I can't handle anything else." He knelt in front of her carefully, waiting for her to raise her eyes before continuing. I know what you're going to say. Then let me say it anyway. His voice came out softer than the last time they had touched on the subject. You don't have to do this alone, Hannah. You never did. And it's not a weakness to ask for help when the work you created has grown larger than two hands can manage. She remained quiet for a long moment, looking at the notebook full of scribbles and cancellations, until she finally nodded, defeated not by the argument, but by her own exhaustion, which she could no longer deny. All right, let's expand. The decision, once made, came to life quickly. Within a few weeks, a second studio opened its doors, just a few blocks from the first one. Larger windows, freshly painted walls, and a team of 6 seamstresses that Hannah chose one by one, rejecting any candidate who didn't treat every piece with the same care she always did. You're trembling, Tiffany laughed, adjusting the grand opening ribbon on the front door. I always tremble at these things. Not this time. Tiffany pointed toward the street, where a line was already forming, even before the official opening. Look at what you built, Hannah. Just look. Hannah looked, and for a full second allowed it to sink in. Not as just another completed task, but as proof that she had indeed succeeded. The growth that followed showed no signs of slowing down. Within a few weeks, Hannah Carter became a name circulating in conversations of people who didn't even know her face, synonymous with pieces with their own identity. No formula, no copying. Accounts that once barely broke even at the end of the month now exceeded numbers she had never imagined seeing, linked to her own name. It was on an ordinary night, after closing the doors of the second studio, that Jeffrey showed up with 2 cups of coffee and a smile far too suspicious to be innocent. I prepared something for you. If it's another expansion spreadsheet, I swear. It's not a spreadsheet. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to her, waiting, his eyes shining with an anticipation he was clearly having fun hiding. Hannah unfolded the paper and found a crooked drawing, completely devoid of talent, of 2 stick figures holding hands under a huge, poorly drawn sun, one with an arrow pointing to Hannah, the other pointing to Jeffrey. What is this? This, he pointed, serious as someone presenting an important contract, is an official diagram proposing that we publicly and definitively declare that we're dating. I made sure to illustrate it, so there's no room for misinterpretation. She let out the laugh she had been trying to hold back since she opened the paper. You drew this. It took me 10 minutes. It was hard. I draw for a living, Jeffrey. This is an offense to my professional eye. So agree to date me, and I promise never to draw anything in front of you again. That's blackmail. That's strategy. He smiled, waiting, in no rush at all. Okay. She laughed, slipping the crooked paper into her pocket as if it were the most valuable thing she had received in months. I accept. Only because this drawing is so bad that I felt sorry for you. He laughed, pulling her by the waist, and kissed her right there, among the fabrics and turned-off machines. From then on, the two began to experience a kind of routine Hannah had never allowed herself to imagine. Impromptu dinners after hours, Sundays without phones, Jeffrey showing up by surprise in the middle of the afternoon just to bring coffee, for no other reason than wanting to see her for a few minutes. While this world grew on one side of town, on the other side something very different was beginning to collapse. Another client canceled. Madison's assistant walked into the room without even knocking, her face pale. They said this season's collection has nothing original about it. Madison slowly looked up, her glass of wine already half empty on the table. Original. What do you mean it has nothing original? The pieces seem dated, especially compared to what's coming out there lately. She didn't need to ask where the comparison came from. She knew exactly. The debts, which started small, silently accumulated, first with fabric suppliers, then with the rent for the space, then with back wages for a steadily shrinking team, as the good seamstresses went away, one by one, looking for better opportunities elsewhere. Madison, who had always been the owner of every stage, now watched her own empire slowly empty, with no one else to blame, because for the first time, the missing talent was entirely her own. A few miles away, Ashley lived her own collapse in silence. She had stopped answering messages, showing up at family dinners, or accepting invitations she used to accept without a second thought. She spent her nights sitting in her apartment, scrolling through feed after feed. Photos of Hannah's studio, dinners with Jeffrey, posts from Tiffany calling her friend the best thing that ever happened to our family. Each image became a new knife. Each caption fed something that had long ceased to be just jealousy. It was no longer about wanting Jeffrey back. It was about not being able to stand seeing Hannah win everything she felt she deserved first. One night, without warning even to herself, she put on a coat and drove to an address she hadn't visited in months. Madison opened the door with deep dark circles under her eyes, surprised to see who was on the other side. Ashley. She raised an eyebrow. What a surprise. What do you want here? I heard your business isn't doing well. Did you come here to laugh at me? No. Ashley stepped inside, her face hard, calculated, with no trace of the hurt girl from weeks ago. I came because I think we have a common problem. Madison closed the door slowly, her eyes shining with a new interest. Go on. The name of that problem, Ashley said softly, is Hannah Carter. Madison poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if Ashley wanted any, and the two sat in the dimly lit room of the decaying studio, each carrying a different version of the same wound. Go on. Madison settled into the armchair, her glass spinning slowly between her fingers. I've hated this girl long enough to not need a new reason. But you? What did she do to you? She took the man I love from me without even realizing she was competing. Ah. Madison let out a dry laugh. So that's it, Jeffrey Wells. Don't speak his name like that. Like what? Like it's a joke. Madison raised her hands, dropping the subject there, and the two remained silent for a moment, only the clinking of ice in the glass breaking the quiet of the room. I lost my studio to her. Madison's voice came out quieter now, without her usual theatricality. 30 years building a name, and she appears out of nowhere with talent I never had and steals everything it took me a lifetime to build. She didn't steal it. She was just better. That's the same thing when you're the one who loses. The conversation stretched deep into the night, each grievance feeding the other, each reopened memory adding fuel to an anger that, on its own, might never have grown so large. When Ashley finally stood up to leave, it was already past midnight, and the two had, without saying it out loud yet, decided the same thing. Hannah needed to lose everything she had gained. I'll think of a way, Madison said at the door. But I'm going to need time. And you, when the time comes. I'll be here. The next day, Madison did something she hadn't done in years. She swallowed her pride. She appeared at the door of Hannah's main studio without warning, her face tired, lacking her usual shine, dressed more simply than Hannah had ever seen her. I need to speak with you. Hannah looked up from the counter, surprised. Madison, I know you have every right to send me away right now. Her voice came out hoarse, controlled. But I'm going to lose the studio to creditors by the end of the month, Hannah. 30 years of work, and it's all going to collapse because no one wants to finance a bankrupt business anymore. Hannah remained silent, not knowing exactly what to feel. I came to ask you for something I never thought I'd have to ask. Madison took a deep breath. Buy my studio. I'd rather sell to someone who understands the craft than watch the creditors take everything in an auction. That night, Hannah told Jeffrey, expecting approval. Instead, she found a suspicious silence. I don't like this. Jeffrey, she is desperate. Exactly. Desperate people will do anything, Hannah, including faking remorse they don't feel. What if it's true? Hannah sat down next to him, her voice softer. What if she really lost everything and is seeing for the first time what she did? What if it isn't? Then I'll have done the right thing anyway. She held his hand. I don't want to be the kind of person who turns their back on someone at rock bottom, even if that person never did the same for me. Jeffrey couldn't argue against that, even though he felt, deep down, that something didn't add up. The meeting to finalize the purchase happened 3 days later in a simple law office, papers scattering across the table. Madison, upon signing the transfer, let slip tears that seemed too genuine to be fake. I'm so sorry. Her voice actually trembled. For everything I did to you, for stealing your credits, for treating you like you were worth nothing. I have no excuse. Hannah felt her chest tighten despite everything. I only ask one thing. Madison looked up, the plea too genuine for Hannah to question. Let me keep working here. As a manager, as anything. This place is the only life I know, Hannah. I have nothing else left. Jeffrey, sitting next to Hannah, clenched his jaw but said nothing in front of the lawyer. "All right." Hannah nodded, her voice gentle. "You stay on as manager." In the car afterward, Jeffrey finally let his frustration slip. Hannah, she just lost control of her own business, and the first thing she does is secure a position inside the very thing she lost? She just wants a purpose, Jeffrey. Or she wants to stay close enough to find a loophole. You're being paranoid. I hope I'm wrong. He looked out the window, his jaw tense. But I'm not going to stop watching. Weeks passed, and the routine seemed to prove Jeffrey had overreacted. Madison worked with apparent dedication, showing no visible sign of resentment, and Hannah slowly began to let her guard down. What she didn't see was what was happening away from everyone's eyes. I reviewed the purchase contract from top to bottom. Madison spoke softly into the phone, the office door locked. There is a clause Hannah never read carefully, hidden in the middle of the small print. If ownership of the studio is contested within the first year, under certain very specific conditions, it can revert back to me. Legally. On the other side of the line, Ashley smiled, still with no one to see. And my contacts? I've already spoken with important people in the fashion world, people who can make or break a career with a single phone call. Then we just need to wait for the right moment. Madison looked out the office window, watching Hannah on the other side of the glass, smiling, suspecting nothing. A big contract, a major event, something worth stealing all at once. And when that moment comes, Madison smiled for the first time in weeks, a smile that had absolutely no regret in it. When it comes, she will lose everything all at once, and it will be too late to stop it. It was exactly this talent, switching between the calculating villain behind locked doors and the cordial manager with an easy smile, that had kept Hannah completely unsuspecting for weeks. "Madison, did you review the fabrics that arrived today?" "I've already separated everything by color, just how you like it." Madison smiled gently, handing over an organized spreadsheet. "I know it wasn't easy for you to trust me again. I won't waste this chance." Hannah nodded, still not realizing how much that phrase hid. The barbs existed, yes. Small comments from Madison about "back in my day we did things differently." Subtle comparisons Hannah learned to ignore as the natural remnants of wounded pride. Nothing that raised a real alarm. Nothing that seemed like more than a woman adjusting, with difficulty, to a new place in the hierarchy she herself had lost. It was on an ordinary Tuesday that everything shifted in scale. "Hannah." Tiffany burst into the studio without even knocking, her phone held high like a trophy. "What is it?" "The Belrose Group wants to sign a contract with you." Tiffany practically screamed the sentence. "The largest chain of luxury boutiques on the East Coast, Hannah. They want to distribute your collection in 40 stores. 40. Hannah felt her legs weaken, needing to lean against the cutting table. "This can't be true." "It is true. They want to announce it at New York Fashion Week next week. Live, at the biggest event of the year." The news spread through the studio like wildfire. Jeffrey arrived minutes later, lifting Hannah off the floor in a hug that spun her in the air, the two of them laughing, unable to believe the size of that achievement. "I always knew." He held her face, suddenly serious in the middle of the celebration. "From the very first sketch I saw on that phone, I knew you would get exactly here." "Stop it, you're going to make me cry too early." "Cry. You deserve every one of those tears." At the back of the room, watching everything from a discreet corner, Madison smiled too. But her smile carried a different weight, a silent calculation behind every word of congratulations that left her mouth. "What an extraordinary contract, Hannah." Madison stepped closer, hugging her with almost motherly care. "I knew you would go far. I just didn't think it would be so fast." "Thank you, Madison. That means a lot coming from you." If Hannah had looked more closely, perhaps she would have noticed the wrong gleam in Madison's eyes, but she was too busy being happy. The Fashion Week event happened exactly as planned. Lights, runway, camera flashes firing non-stop as models paraded Hannah Carter's pieces before an audience that included the biggest names in the industry. The contract with the Belrose Group was signed right there, live, with applause that echoed throughout the entire hall. "You made history today," Jeffrey whispered in her ear backstage while Hannah was still trembling with emotion. "This is just the beginning." The payment from the partnership, An amount that would change Hannah's life forever would be processed in 24 hours, straight to the company's accounts. It was exactly the window Madison had been waiting for. The next morning, even before the studio opened, Madison was already in the office, papers ready, lawyer in place. Using the clause hidden in the purchase contract, that fine print Hannah had never examined carefully enough, Madison filed for the legal reversion of ownership of the original studio, citing a technically valid violation of exclusivity clause that no lawyer would contest in time. And while that was happening, the payment from the Belrose Group, directed to an account Madison had never removed from the old contract, landed straight in her hands. Hannah only found out when she arrived at the studio 2 hours later and found the lock changed. "What is happening?" She knocked on the door, confused, trying to use her own key without success. Madison, a security guard she had never seen before, opened the door, handing over a sealed envelope without a single word of explanation. Inside, the papers confirmed everything. The reversion of ownership, legal and irreversible for now, signed under a clause Hannah vaguely remembered seeing months ago, never imagining those few lines hid an entire trap. That was when she checked the company's accounts. The payment from the Belrose Group had never arrived. No, her voice came out weak, completely powerless. No, this can't be happening. She called the bank. She called the lawyer. Every call confirmed the same thing in different words. The money had been diverted before even touching the correct accounts, and the studio where it all began was no longer hers. Hannah felt the ground disappear from beneath her feet. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the space where she had designed her first dress alone, where she had cried, laughed, started over. It was her entire reputation, built with her own hands, threatened with collapse along with everything else, as clients and partners were already beginning to ask what had happened to the biggest name of the season. It was Jeffrey who found her, hours later, sitting on the sidewalk in front of the building that was no longer hers, the envelope still clutched to her chest. "Hannah." She looked up, and what he saw there shattered any remaining patience he had with Madison. "I lost everything, Jeffrey." Her voice came out in pieces. "The studio, the money, maybe even my reputation, everything I built." He knelt in front of her, holding Hannah's freezing hands in his, without a moment's hesitation. "You didn't lose everything, Jeffrey. You still have your talent. You still have your name. And you still have me." He squeezed her hands firmly, his eyes filled with a determination that left no room for doubt. "If we have to start from scratch, we start from scratch. Together. I'm not going anywhere, Hannah. Not now, not ever." For the first time since discovering the betrayal, Hannah felt that maybe there was ground beneath her feet after all. But somewhere in the city, Madison smiled in front of a computer screen, watching the balance of an account that shouldn't exist grow in real time, with no idea that this very money would, in a few weeks, leave a trail that no hidden clause could cover up. Jeffrey was still holding Hannah's hands on the sidewalk when she suddenly stood up, breaking away from him with a firmness that caught him by surprise. "I need to go there." "Hannah, wait." "No, Jeffrey. I need to look her in the face." He tried to catch her by the arm, but the determination on Hannah's face left no room for discussion. In 15 minutes she was standing at the door of the office that until the day before had been her own studio. Madison received her with a thin smile, sitting behind the desk that was now hers again. "Hannah, what a surprise." "Don't fake surprise." Hannah's voice came out controlled, but trembling inside. "You planned this. 2 days before the contract closed, you had already registered the reversion. This isn't a coincidence, Madison. This is premeditation." Madison's smile didn't waver even a millimeter. "I don't know what you're talking about. I will find out the truth." "Find out what?" Madison stood up, walking around the desk with the calm of someone who had already rehearsed that moment. "A contract signed by you, in your own handwriting, your own signature? You should have read it carefully, dear. But that has always been your problem, trusting the wrong people too much. You faked remorse. You cried in front of me. And it worked, didn't it?" The coldness of that response hit Hannah like a slap. She took a step back, feeling the bitter taste of being deceived so completely, so calculatedly. "I will get everything back, Madison. And when that happens, you'll have nowhere to run. Good luck with that. Madison sat back down, casually. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. My business. Hannah left before the tears could show, walking quickly down the street without any clear direction, anger and despair competing for space inside her chest. It was by chance, or perhaps not so much by chance, that she spotted Ashley leaving a cafe a few yards away, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low but tense. Hannah stopped. Something in Ashley's posture, the way she looked over her shoulder every few seconds, set off an alarm inside Hannah. She waited for Ashley to hang up and approached. Ashley. Ashley turned around, and for a fraction of a second, quick but real, her face registered panic before she composed herself. Hannah. I heard about what happened with the studio. I'm really sorry. You knew. What? You knew what Madison was going to do. The words came out of Hannah before she herself was absolutely sure, guided more by instinct than by proof. I just saw your face. That wasn't a surprise to you. Hannah, I have no idea what you're... Stop. Hannah's voice cut through the street, making people passing by look at the two of them. Stop lying to me. You and Madison talk. I know you do. Ashley remained silent for a long moment, and it was that silence that confirmed everything. I didn't do anything illegal. You didn't answer what I asked. Ashley ran a hand through her hair, nervous, the facade beginning to crack. I just gave her some contacts. People in the fashion world who could help reactivate her name. You helped her get back on her feet to destroy me. I didn't know exactly what she was going to do with the contract. But you knew she was going to do something. Ashley couldn't answer that. Her silence was answer enough. I trusted you. Hannah's voice cracked for the first time since leaving Madison's office. You stood at my grand opening party, smiling, pretending to root for me. I didn't do it out of malice, Hannah. Ashley's eyes filled with tears now, her defense falling to pieces. I did it because I lost everything when I lost Jeffrey, and seeing you win exactly what I always wanted, I couldn't bear it. That's no excuse. I know. I will find out everything you did, Ashley. Every detail. Hannah took a step back, her face hard again. And when I do, I'll make sure everyone knows. She walked away before Ashley could answer, her heart beating so fast she barely heard her phone vibrating in her pocket. It was Tiffany. Hannah, I know this isn't the best time, but I have an idea. The idea, explained in detail in Tiffany's kitchen hours later, seemed simple. Use social media to show the world that Hannah's talent remained intact even without the original studio. I don't know, Tiffany. Hannah rubbed her face, exhausted. I don't have the energy for another attempt that might not work. It will work. You don't know that. I know that standing still won't work. Tiffany held her friend's hands. Let me try. Please. Hannah gave in, more from a lack of alternatives than from actual hope. The first video went online that same night, Tiffany wearing one of the last remaining pieces, talking to the camera about the injustice Hannah had suffered. 2 hours passed. Then 4. Only 300 views. Tiffany checked her phone constantly, disappointment growing on her face. I don't understand, it should have worked. Maybe people have already forgotten. Hannah felt despair tighten again. Stronger than before. Maybe Madison really won. Don't say that. It's the truth, Tiffany. I lost the studio, lost the money, and now not even this is working. Hannah stood up, pacing back and forth in the small apartment. What else can I do? Jeffrey, who had been watching in silence, finally stood up as well. You can stop fighting this battle alone. I'm not alone. You're acting like you are. He stepped closer, gently cupping her face. Hannah, you confronted Madison today. You confronted Ashley. You're exhausted, and that's normal because what happened to you was cruel and unfair. But the fight doesn't end in a single night. Sometimes the turnaround takes time. And what if it never comes? Then we keep trying together until it does. Hannah rested her head against his shoulder, letting her exhaustion win over her anger for a moment. For the first time in hours, it was at that exact moment of silence that Tiffany's phone buzzed again. Wait. She looked up from the screen, her voice changing tone. Wait. What is it? The video. Tiffany turned the screen to face the two of them, her hands trembling. Someone with a lot of followers just shared it. And the numbers are... Hannah, look at this. The counter, which had been stuck at 300 views for hours, was now climbing on the screen before their eyes. 1,000, 3,000, 10,000, numbers changing so fast that Tiffany couldn't even read them out loud in time. Hannah felt her heart race in a completely different way from the confrontation that afternoon. Maybe, finally, something was starting to turn. But somewhere in the city, Ashley dialed a number she hadn't dialed in days, her voice trembling with panic. "Madison, she knows. Hannah knows I helped you." On the other side of the line, Madison remained silent for a long moment before answering, her voice colder and more calculating than ever. "Then it's time to ensure she never proves anything." The numbers on Tiffany's phone kept climbing. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 views in less than an hour, comments multiplying so fast that it was impossible to keep track of them one by one. "Is this real?" Hannah took the phone from Tiffany's hands, pressing the screen as if she needed to be sure she wasn't dreaming. "Is this really happening?" "It is happening." Jeffrey laughed, putting his arm around her shoulders. "And it won't stop anytime soon." It didn't stop. The next morning, the remaining studio opened with a line on the sidewalk. Orders poured in from states Hannah had never imagined reaching. The phone didn't stop ringing. The seamstresses arrived earlier and left later, and yet the list of orders grew faster than hands could manage. Hannah had barely slept, but she woke up with a different kind of energy, not the adrenaline of panic, but something more solid. The certainty that, this time, the ground wouldn't disappear from beneath her feet. It was exactly when she was starting to breathe again that the phone rang with an unknown number. "Miss Carter? My name is Richard Holloway. I represent a group of investors from the Belrose Group." The voice was formal, serious, the kind that doesn't call to give good news. "We need to speak about the payment that never reached your company's correct account." Hannah closed the office door, her heart racing. "I don't understand what happened to that payment either." "We conducted an internal investigation, Miss Carter." Mr. Holloway made a short but heavy pause. "We discovered that the signature that reverted ownership of your studio was registered at the notary 2 days before the closing of the contract with the Belrose Group." Hannah stood frozen. 2 days before. This means the reversion was blueprint designed and premeditated, planned in advance while the contract was still being negotiated. Someone knew exactly when the money would be transferred and ensured the destination account was changed before that happened. "Madison." The name came out in a low voice, almost to herself. "That is what the evidence points to. I've already contacted my legal department, and we will cooperate with any formal investigation. The diverted money belongs to your company, Miss Carter, and we will help prove it." Hannah hung up the phone with trembling hands, but this time not from fear. Before she could even process it all, the phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "Hannah Carter? Who is speaking?" "My name is Daniel Reyes." A pause. "I worked with Madison Reed many years ago. Before you." Hannah stood up from her chair slowly. "I heard from the news what she did to you." Daniel's voice was calm, but carried the weight of someone who had carried something heavy for too long. "And I need to tell you something I should have told you much sooner." "I'm listening." "She did the same to me. Stole every design I developed, put her name on it, discarded me when she no longer needed me. I tried to speak up at the time, but I was young, nameless, resourceless. No one listened to me." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I don't care about pity." He said this without sharpness, only with the firmness of someone who had already overcome the fragile part of that story. "I care about justice, and this time I have what I didn't have before." He paused. "I kept everything, Hannah. Years of records, emails, dated sketches, a recording of a conversation where she admits in so many words that she was putting her name on designs that weren't hers." Hannah felt her pulse race. "You kept a recording." "I kept it for 10 years, hoping it would one day be worth something." His voice finally let slip what sounded like relief. "And now it is. If you let me, I want to use all of this together with what you have. Together, we won't let her escape this time." When Jeffrey heard the 2 phone calls, sitting at the small studio table with a cup of coffee he had forgotten to drink, he remained silent for a moment before smiling. "I told you she wouldn't get away. You said we would start from scratch if we had to." You didn't say anything about her not getting away. Well, I thought that too. I just didn't say it out loud so I wouldn't pressure you. Hannah laughed, and that laugh, small, tired, but genuine, was the first since before the scam that sounded like her true self. The formal investigation was opened 3 days later, with Mr. Richard Holloway and his legal department delivering the notary documents to the authorities. Daniel's recording was authenticated. The emails, the dated records, the drafts, every piece fit together with a precision that left no room for doubt. Madison found out that the investigation had started on a Thursday afternoon. That same night, she tried to make an international transfer. The money diverted from the Belrose Group contract, moved from an account that shouldn't exist toward an offshore bank. The transaction was blocked in real time. 2 days later, when she tried to board a flight to Miami with a suitcase and documents that didn't match the name on her passport, the police were already waiting at the airport. Hannah found out from a call from Jeffrey, who had received the news from the lawyer minutes before. Madison has been arrested. She stood still in the middle of the studio, letting the sentence settle inside her. And Ashley? She's being interrogated as an accomplice. Jeffrey paused. The messages exchanged between the two of them were recovered by the authorities. There's no denying her involvement. Hannah rested both hands on the cutting table, looking at the space around her. The remaining studio, smaller than the original but intact, still standing, still hers. Jeffrey, I'm here. I want the studio back, the original, the place where it all started. You will have it. His voice came out without hesitation. With Madison arrested and ownership contested in court, the lawyer said the reversion won't hold up. It's just a matter of time. And Daniel? That man waited 10 years for justice. Are you going to give it to him? Hannah looked up from the table. Her answer already formed before she even thought. I'm going to give him much more than that. On the other side of town, in a windowless interrogation room, Ashley stared at the phone the authorities had returned to her after extracting every message, every audio, every piece of evidence she herself had created, never imagining it would one day be used against her. Her career, her contacts, the name she had built in the fashion world, everything was collapsing at a speed she couldn't even keep up with. And somewhere in the city, Hannah Carter slept for the first time in weeks, with the certainty that, this time, the turnaround was real. The next day, Hannah arrived at the studio and stood at the door for a moment, not entering, just looking at the space that had been hers, lost, and now was hers again. The same walls, the same windows, the same smell of fabric and wood she had learned to love even before understanding why. Are you going in, or are you going to stand there waiting for the studio to invite you? Tiffany appeared from behind her, gently pushing her shoulder. Hannah laughed and took the first step. The team waiting inside, the seamstresses who had stayed, the new ones she had hired at the remaining studios, Daniel Reyes standing in a corner with a discreet smile of someone who had finally arrived where he belonged long ago, began to applaud as soon as she crossed the threshold. Hannah had to bite her lip hard, not to cry in front of everyone. Okay. She raised her hands, laughing. We'll cry together later. Right now we have a runway show to set up. The relaunch of the collection happened 3 weeks later, in a hall larger than anything Hannah had used before. Not out of vanity, but because the invitations sold out in 48 hours and they had to change venues twice before finding one that could hold everyone who wanted to be there. Tiffany managed the coverage on social media with the energy of someone born for it, broadcasting live every backstage moment, every last-minute adjustment, every moment of healthy tension that precedes something big. Daniel, now honorary creative director of the brand, moved through the backstage with a calm that contrasted with the frenzy around him. Stopping here to adjust a sewing detail, there to suggest changing an accessory. 10 years of stored experience finally being used the right way, with the right name signed underneath. You know, I didn't expect it to end like this, he said to Hannah backstage while the last models were being prepared. When I called you, I just wanted to see justice. I didn't expect you to give me a place in here. You should have had this place 10 years ago. Hannah adjusted the lapel of his blazer naturally, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I'm just correcting a mistake that I wasn't the one to make. Daniel nodded, unable to respond, and it was at that exact instant that Jeffrey appeared through the side door backstage, in a dark suit, his hair slightly messy in the way Hannah had learned to find irresistible. "Everything good here?" "Almost." Hannah straightened her own clothes, taking a deep breath. "Are you nervous?" "Me?" He pretended to be offended. "I'm not the name on the poster outside. But you are the name on the investment contract." Technical detail. He stepped closer, adjusting a loose thread on the shoulder of her dress with a care that was anything but technical. "You look beautiful, Hannah. And you're going to kill it. As always. If you keep talking like that, I won't even be able to walk in a straight line out there." He laughed, and the sound of that laugh made the nervousness inside her recede a bit. The show started right on time, and every piece that entered the runway drew a different kind of reaction from the audience. Gasps, applause, comments out loud that the guests didn't even try to hold back. The collection was bolder than anything Hannah had released before, more personal, as if each piece had been designed on the other side of a struggle she had to lose before understanding what she really wanted to create. When the last model walked off the runway and the lights in the hall dimmed slightly, announcing the end of the show, the applause that came was of the kind Hannah had never heard directed at her. Long, standing, in no hurry to end. She stood in the center of the runway, waving, smiling, her eyes burning with a warmth she didn't try to hold back this time. Gradually, the audience began to leave, the music returned at a lower volume, and the hall grew almost empty. Only the staff, Tiffany taking the last photos, Daniel talking to two guests in the corner. Hannah stood in the center of the runway, looking at the emptying hall, letting the moment settle inside her calmly, in no hurry to leave. That was when she noticed the lights had changed. All the lights in the hall went out at once, except for a single spotlight, white and direct, illuminating exactly the spot where she stood. Hannah frowned, looking around, confused. Then she heard footsteps. Jeffrey stepped into the cone of light, walking slowly down the runway, his face serious in a way she rarely saw on him, not the seriousness of a businessman, but that of someone about to do the most important thing he had ever done in his life, and knew it. "Jeffrey, what is happening?" He didn't answer with words. He stopped in front of her, looked into her eyes for a long, full moment, and then knelt. Hannah brought her hand to her mouth. From his suit pocket, he pulled a small box made of dark velvet and opened it slowly. Inside, on a white gold ring, was a diamond cut in a shape Hannah recognized immediately, because she herself had drawn that shape hundreds of times in her life. A pair of sewing scissors, delicate and precise, captured in stone forever. "You designed your future, Hannah." His voice came out steady, but there was something trembling beneath it, a real emotion he didn't try to hide. "You created, recreated, lost, and started over without ever stopping to believe in what you knew how to do. I saw that from the very first sketch you showed me on that phone. And every day since then has only convinced me more of one thing." She couldn't speak. She could only look. "Let me be part of your future forever." He looked up, and what she saw in his eyes was the answer to every doubt she had ever had about trusting someone again. "Will you marry me?" The silence lasted exactly a moment. "Yes." Hannah's voice came out cracked, full of tears and laughter at the same time. "Yes, Jeffrey." He placed the ring on her finger with slightly trembling hands, stood up, and kissed her in the center of that illuminated runway, while a shower of silver confetti rained down from the ceiling of the hall, covering the two of them in silver and light. From somewhere backstage, Tiffany screamed so loudly that the echo ran through the entire empty hall. And Hannah laughed, with the ring shining on her finger, confetti in her hair, and Jeffrey's face a few inches from hers, with the lightness of someone who finally, after everything, had arrived exactly where she always belonged. And with everything that happened, Hannah discovered that a person's talent doesn't disappear when people try to erase their name. She also discovered that the doors that close today can clear the way for even greater opportunities tomorrow. Because someone's true value isn't in immediate recognition, but in what no one can take away: the character, dedication, and gift they carry within themselves. When the right time comes, All of this finds a way to shine. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment telling us which moment moved you the most. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And if you're not yet part of our community, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next story.